Let's get deep with research data, talking about customer expectations, cybersecurity, and AI. As I welcome Anurag Agarwal from TechIsle. Welcome to the Business of Tech Lounge, the live version of the Business of Tech podcast. It's Wednesday, July 31st, 2024, and I'm Dave Sobel. I'll be taking questions and comments throughout the show, so make sure to put them in chat. In particular, with a show and discussion like this, I love it to be interactive. So make sure you put any of your comments and questions for us in the chat window. Now, there is a dedicated question section at the end for any listener-submitted questions or ones that we may want to cover to wrap up. But in particular today, I want to make it interactive. So if you've got something to say, pipe up and throw it into the comments. I want to thank Sales Builder, our Patreon sponsor, whose support makes this show possible. Focus on your IT sales workflow with the power of automation and visit them at salesbuilder.com. That's BUILDR.com. And a reminder, I'll be watching that chat. But let's kick off with our story today. I want to talk about some of the research. And I'm going to start with TechIsle's latest research around security, giving you some of those latest research data points. Funding for IT security is projected to increase among high-growth SMBs, with 21% of rapidly growing SMBs and 26% of mid-sized companies expecting at least a 15% budget increase for 2024. Additionally, 18% of SMBs and 21% of mid-market companies plan to boost their security spending by 12% from the previous year. However, 42% of small businesses lack a cyber incident response plan. A TechIsle survey of 600 small businesses shows that 34% expect customer reputation damage and 23% foresee significant bottom line impacts due to operational challenges. So let's welcome the man behind the research, welcoming Anurag Agarwal from TechIsle to the show. Anurag, it is great to see you.
Thank you for having me, Dave. It is such a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Oh, likewise. I love when you post data because you've always got stuff that is sort of really speaks to what we're seeing in the marketplace right now. And so I kind of want to talk to you a little bit about that IT budget data that you're seeing here, because at first glance, I'm inclined to think, okay, good, a 12% increase seems good. But at the same time, if I take a quick thought and think about inflation numbers, they're kind of not too far off from that. We're seeing, let's say, 3% inflation now in the US, higher outside of the US. So in some of that's going to be eaten up by inflation, and tools costs are going up too. Where do you think this is balancing in terms of security spend, and what are you seeing?
So security has always been the number one priority outside of cloud investment for the SMB customer. And the way we define SMB is 1 to 1,000 employees, and then we cover the upper mid-market as well, which is 1,000 to 5,000 employees. But then we are also seeing the fact that the spending on security is kind of slower than the spending on cloud per se. So in a way, your question is about inflation and so on and so forth. But the important thing to really understand is that there is tremendous amount of spend on services and on consulting is going on by the SMBs on security. And why is that? It's not about just the product, because what the SMBs are really looking for is our help, is the help around choosing the right security technology, doing the risk assessment, and then deploying or architecting the right security framework, and then architecting the solution, and then deploying the solution. So there is a tremendous amount of spending on the services that is going on with this, which you may say that it is not subject to the same level of inflation. But the point here is that the spending on the security is kind of become higher. Yeah.
Okay. Now you said something that is ultimately music to my ears, which is the idea that that consulting is actually the lead product. And I'm actually encouraged to hear that cloud spending remains kind of the top bit of that, because my basic premise for the way that I kind of think about IT services broadly is customers want to spend money on things that drive revenue most of all, or cut costs. Security is difficult to pair to to directly those top lines. I know myself and most customers think that I have to spend some money on security, but I don't want to spend infinite money, particularly when most organizations that are selling me security services don't actually provide guarantees, right? I can buy infinite amounts of money. I could put an infinite amount of money, but I've never found a security professional who will then say, oh, well, you finally reached enough and I can guarantee you won't be hacked. So there is diminishing returns there. Let's take that quick step back. Tell me, do you think my premise is right that customers are measuring it that way? And what are you seeing as kind of the trend there and what they want to spend money on?
You are 100% correct, Dave. And I'm so happy that you actually mentioned that, because for the SMB customer, it's a hyper entwined world, right? And what the SMB customer is asking for and looking for is, tell me what is the good enough security for us, right? And then the question is, what does good look like? Is it based on the size of the business, a small business? Is it based on the mid-market spending differently? Is it based on the IT maturity of that SMB customer? Is it based on the cloud maturity? Is it based on the innovation mindset? And the answer is all of the above, because what is happening is that we are seeing different levels of security adoption in terms of what is good enough. Do I need absolutely the best? There is no guarantee, right? I mean, we have used this, you have used this, I have used this, many of the others have used it. It's not a question of if but when. And this, for example, 54% of the SMBs have had security incidents in the last 1 year, and we have been doing this research for the last 10-15 years. In the last 5 years, that number 54% has not moved, right? It
Right.
has been static at that level. So the cyber industry is sprawling. The cyber supply chain is complex. There is a vast array of attacks, attackers, and threat vectors. Business imperatives pull cyber strategy in multiple directions. So that's where the concept of this consulting and the services comes into the picture.
I'm so with you there, because I've been thinking that one of the things that I've been talking to with MSPs, which seems to resonate, is this idea of, look, I want you to be really good at the basics. Focus on really good disaster recovery, and I quip and say I want you to be able to tell the ransomware guys to f off, because you're planned, right? Because you've planned and you've got good disaster recovery, meaning not only data protection but an incident response plan, meaning that we are expecting to go down. And when we go down, we know what's going to happen, and we're going to execute our plan, and we're going to restore from backup. And I sort of look and I'm going to use CrowdStrike because it isn't a security incident, but plays out exactly the same way. The reason why Delta Airlines struggled as long as they did is they didn't really have a particularly great incident response plan for that style. And if they had one, they could be up faster. And I think the one last bit that I've been saying is that a savvy organization might even choose to self-insure, that rather than spend money on cyber insurance, you might just put money away, particularly in a market where I can get 3 to 5% on my cash sitting in a bank, that I could actually put some money away for a downtime and restore. That's kind of counter to like what a lot of the security vendors are promoting, right? I mean, like, that feels a little different of a strategy than what the market feels like it's trending toward. Am I off base there?
Yeah, you're right, and I'm sorry I cut you short there, because I got very excited by what you're telling me, because of the fact that everybody's trying to gravitate towards this cyber insurance, right? Because they say there's some level of guarantee, but getting to talk to an underwriter, getting that cyber insurance, that checklist keeps on increasing, right? And the checklist also has got a predefined list of security vendors, right? So that means, hey, you have no option but to go with the security vendors. But I think the most important point, which I think you brought up, CrowdStrike. So what we are seeing in the SMBs is now that finally the SMBs are realizing that cybersecurity is a business risk. And our data of over 3,000 SMBs that we did, a survey that we did very recently, 54% of the SMBs already know now that cyber attacks are a business risk. So the CrowdStrike example brings me to the other point. Now what these SMBs are thinking, you know what? I want to move away from just cybersecurity aspect of securing my enterprise. I want to move to cyber resiliency, which essentially means the ability to bounce back, right, from any type of incident which happens. And that is not only about just the cyber resiliency, but the entire business resiliency. And cybersecurity becomes one piece of it. So the idea for your MSPs and the channel partners and the end customer is to say, you know what? Let us define what business resiliency means for us. Is it operational resiliency? Is it digital resiliency? Is it cyber resiliency? Which one of these kind of bubbles to the top? And then design your cybersecurity posture from there onwards. So
Okay,
if they had that business resiliency in place, then Delta organization would have bounced back, as quickly as some of the other airlines.
Well, that interestingly leads me to the second thing that I kind of wanted to talk about, because if we're thinking broader about the way businesses are spending their money, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about AI a little bit. And I'm going to cite your data so that listeners may be catching up on this, because I found some data points really interesting that I wanted to dive into. You quote that a significant 77% of small businesses and 86% of upper mid-market firms are familiar with AI PCs. So that shows that high awareness of the technology's benefits. And interestingly, 32% of small businesses and 64% of mid-market firms plan to purchase AI PCs. And then the other data point that I wanted to highlight there is that core and upper mid-market firms are adopting an average of 2.2 large language models. And additionally, 36% of them are piloting with an average of 3.5. And 24% of them plan to add an additional 2.2 large language models in there. And this is interesting because I start thinking about the way people are going to spend their larger IT budget. And I'm starting to say, like, well, where is the AI spend happening, and how is it going to happen? And I want to sort of throw out one of my working premise and get your take on it based on your data research.
I'm always afraid of your premises.
Well, good, because that's the fun part. So my thinking right now is that in 2024, the big opportunity around AI is the idea of working with organizations in that consulting mindset of doing data preparation, a bit of data inventory, doing the part to make sure that we're ready for different security models, because one of the big things about LLMs is you can't just necessarily let them loose on all your data, because they won't have any concept of security and give it out to anybody who asks. So you have to start thinking about that and prepping. And that's your 2024 big opportunity, is getting businesses ready. And I tend to think that it's going to be using the kind of intellectual frameworks like a NIST framework or a risk assessment framework to put that together. And what we're going to see in 25 and 26 will be more advanced pilot programs, but additionally the investment in AI PCs, making sure that enough is ready in the marketplace. So how far off am I, and what's your data saying about that way of thinking?
I think you're absolutely right. I think the way we have to think about AI is the fact that obviously it has taken the entire industry by storm, right? And what I tell our clients is the fact that, cloud was considered to be as a great equalizer. right? And the reason why I bring up this topic about equalizer was that, hey, you know what? At least now SMBs can compete with the enterprises because they can quickly adopt SaaS, they can quickly adopt IaaS, and they are at the same competitive level. What AI is doing, I call that as AI is the great mirror. What it means is that basically it exposes every process, every data, every asset that you've got, and it allows every process to be recast using every available asset within the organization, every data point, both internal and external, right? And this is true for the SMB, this is true for the partner organization, this is true for everybody else. So yes, that there are so many different pilots which are going on, at a very simple level. I mean, there was a company which I was speaking with the other day, a mid-market firm. There are 80 pilots that are going on, and they don't know which one will succeed, right? So they have got these things going on. But the way we will think about this is the fact that, you know what, the partner, from a partner perspective, they have to orient their thinking towards opportunities and not products. Most of the products they are saying, most of the partners are thinking about is saying, you know what, let us sell as many products as possible. And then they're looking at POCs and things like that, but without understanding what is the core customer priority, right? So this is the cute example of 80 different projects. But then if a partner, a knowledgeable partner, comes into the picture and says, you know what, let us understand what is your core business objective and the priority. Let us align ourselves with you, right? And then these partners should really focus on deep capabilities in one area, not have a broad and shallow expertise, because that is not going to go anywhere, right? So we are seeing that yes, pilots are being done, but the pilots are not coming out to really production. Only out of the 96% of the SMBs that are actually focused on using Gen AI, only 12% of the projects have actually, or only 12% of the SMBs have actually put their projects in production as of now. We expect that that will probably increase over the next year or so, but then many will kind of fall by the wayside and they will kind of give up on it and they will continue to experiment in a public cloud way.
Wow. Okay. So that I look at that data and I say, this is exactly like sort of the right time to strike with good consulting, right? Because if we've got a lot of experimentation going on, but not a lot of success out in production, that's a really good place to be if you're in the experimental or willing to invest in trial. But we
Yep.
need to be careful about pace there, because obviously we're probably going to be experiencing a lot of failure. This is the joy of the hype cycle, right? We're right in the
Yep.
middle of the mess and people are figuring out what it can do. I want to get your take on another. So again, if we're thinking about this, and you've done some thinking on large language models, one of the things that I find is really unique about working with them, and I've done some of my own product coding against the large language models, it is in broad strokes, they're all quite good. And so they're quite equivalent. It's very much subtleties of how they work. I've often talked about the wine analogy, that I think a lot of the large language models are a lot like the various varietals of grapes that go into winemaking, right? That at a high level, well, we just make wine. And if we just analyze them, the output is still wine that goes with food. The subtlety is well, there are certain kinds that go better with other kinds of food and solve solutions in a better way. But if you happen to like a white wine with a heavy steak, that's fine, right? It'll ultimately solve the problem of making you not have thirst and go with the meal. But it's the matching that's much more important. So where I'm thinking that this expertise and where I would be pushing that services mindset to go is to make sure that you're understanding the application of the right language model against the right problem. And in a way, I think right now, my analogy of the sommelier really does work, because what you need to be good at is pulling solutions, AI solutions off the shelf and getting the right ones into a customer's hands. Do you think that's the opportunity? And how complicated do you think it's going to be? Because there's a lot of language models and there's a lot of complexity there.
Right. So, first of all, I'm going to steal that example of yours. So the wine example, I like that a lot. And, I'm going to use that with our clients. No, which is I mean, exactly to your point, that this is what we say to the partner community as well, right? To say, align yourself with one cloud leader. That's it. You cannot and should not spread your wings across multiple hyperscalers until and unless you are like a $1 billion, partner, which has got the deep bench and the capabilities and all that. But align yourself with one partner, whether be it AWS or Azure or GCP, whosoever it is, and where you can build some kind of affinity, right? And use that as a launching pad, right? So exactly, so you need to have that level of expertise. And what of the some of the savvy partners are doing, whether you call it fast track, you call it fast start, you call it an assessment period, or you call it an advisory period and things like that. I think that's the discovery period, and we are seeing tremendous amount of partners actually focusing in that particular area and saying, you know what, we will come. And by the way, it's a paid engagement, and the SMBs are willing to pay for it, where you have a 2 week or 3 week or a 4 week assessment, whether the SMB organization or the upper mid market organization is it even ready to actually adopt AI. What is also going to happen is, to your point, is AI is actually changing how businesses are operating at all levels, right? It is altering the IT economics and the service delivery capabilities. So, what an AI is being driven by the line of business buyers, right? So, from a partner's point of view, the discussions with IT buyers are changing pretty rapidly, right? And AI has made it very relevant for non-technical managers and expanding overall opportunity and things like that. So, which means that a partner should actually go. This is the number one question we get from partners. I am creating this thought leadership documents, but I'm not getting anywhere. Are you reaching the right customer? Are you talking to IT because you are an MSP? You are used to talking to an MSP, but the buyer has shifted, right? The experimentation is going on somewhere else. The POCs are being done somewhere else. Have you expanded your purview? Has your marketing been educating the LOB on your capabilities and things like that? So I think the rate of change, the equation is kind of changing. Does it answer your question?
It does, but it brings up one that I want to bring up, because you said something there that was really subtle that I want to make sure I examine, because you talked about the partnership being important at the hyperscaler and cloud level. And I don't disagree. I think that's a critically important point. But what it implies is that you're not prioritizing the large language model vendor. So, for example, if I'm thinking about the right, so I'm saying, like, you think it's important to make sure it's Azure, GCP, AWS, versus a choice of, say, OpenAI or Anthropic. Where do you think that dynamic is going between the choice of the hyperscaler versus the choice of the large language model vendor?
That's a great question and a very interesting question. I'll answer that with an example as well. So, when you start to look at our data, right, the momentum is towards OpenAI because obviously they were the first out of the gate, right? Then it is Gemini, right? Google's Gemini. Amazon's Bedrock and Q are kind of towards the end, that type of thing. But the momentum in terms of the adoption level, the penetration and interest is towards Anthropic today, right? But then at some point in time, all these LLMs are gonna become, they will reach a parity, right? So you cannot be spreading yourself across multiple LLM models. Yes, it could be a use case basis. So the example which I want to give is, there's a company that is all in on Azure, OpenAI, working on it, build some solutions on it, deploying it for their customers, so on and so forth. New York Summit happened of AWS. Anthropic announced its Claude 3.5 model. It has a great graphing capability. All of a sudden, the partner thinks, you know what? I made a mistake. I need to go the Anthropic route. I said that fine, go and do your assessment. How quickly the engineers revolted. We can't do it. We cannot overall change. We cannot tell the customers. We cannot, drive this kind of change, right? So they went back to Azure. Azure said, you know what? Don't worry about it. We will use our Fusion technology. We will use Power BI on top of it, and we will give you the same level of capabilities. So the point here is this, that once you hedge your bet with one hyperscaler, build your expertise in this area, and the onus lies on the partner, not on the hyperscaler, to actually work with you. Because then if you are doing so well with one hyperscaler, then they will also help you achieve the success level that you want to achieve. Over a period of time, which is maybe 2 years from now, when the LLMs become commodity, then the partners can have the capabilities to change the underlying components, which is the LLM that I'm talking about, to change them as the market evolves. I think we are not there yet, right? And I think that's where it is important to have deep expertise in one area and then find that one marquee customer and then go along with that one customer.
All right, that helps a lot, because in particular, as we think about a lot of these solution providers, they often have too many vendors, and your approach there helps us make sure that we're not overextending. I want to be respectful of your time. I'm going to ask one sort of last big question. What's the big trend that you're watching most right now that kind of has your most interest?
So the trend that we are seeing, let us talk about is specifically in the SMB space, right? We are saying we talked about LLMs. So what comes up in the mind is, are the LLMs the right way to go? And what the SMBs are realizing and the partners are realizing, it's not the LLMs, it's the SLMs, the small language model. And that's the immediate trend I want to watch as to whether that is going to take off very soon, only because of the fact that, let us have smaller wins. Let us have smaller ROIs. See what a language model can do in accelerating the AI adoption within my organization. And that is also palatable for the MSPs and the solution providers to kind of build that and manage that. And then along with this, what is happening is the trend is that, for the last 2 years, we have been talking about, security assessment and IT, the services, the managed services around security assessment and all, in which we started to talk about this talk as well around that particular area. We also saw a trend around cloud cost optimization. But you know what? The number one trend that we are seeing, both from the partner side and from the end customer side, is AI assessment. And AI assessment has supplanted this cloud cost optimization trend. It has supplanted the security assessment trend, because that is where the market is moving, and we are going to closely watch that. And when the AI PCs come out, right? When AMD's Ryzen-based AI PCs come out, when this Intel's Lunar Lake PCs get announced, which will be probably next year, then we will see a wider adoption of Copilot plus PCs. That's when the SLMs will probably come into real dominance. I want to watch that trend.
Well, I know what you and I will be talking about in roughly 6 months then, because I'm going to be watching for the latest research you've put out and keep an eye out for how that SLMs trend comes. Anurag, this has been great fun. I really appreciate you joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was great fun. We should do it again.
We will distinctly do it again. Well, this weekend, listeners, you're going to get my discussion with Colin Britton from Devicey. Colin and I talk about AI in business operations, and he's got a unique perspective on where he thinks it may be applicable, the top of the market. Here's a preview of our discussion.
And I think the AI promise is to go the other way, which is the highest common denominator. So in business operations, you should be able to increase the productivity of your best players and increase the productivity of your pool overall, but from a top-down perspective, not a bottom-up. With the AI promise, it starts to become the other way down because the critical thinking becomes much more important when you've got AI there. I'll give you a really quick example. A friend of mine the other day, who's a data scientist, super smart guy. He's like working on some dashboards, and he's like, I don't have to write code anymore. ChatGPT writes my code. And he said, you don't have to learn a new language. And it's like, yeah, it was, 95% there, minor tweak, and it was done.
My Patreon supporters already have this interview and can watch it right away if you want to listen now. It'll drop on the weekend on both YouTube and the podcast feed. If you're interested, I really do encourage you to go listen. You can get it at patreon.com/MSP Radio right now, or find it on the feeds on the weekend. I want to thank Sales Builder, our Patreon sponsor, whose support makes the show possible. Focus on your IT sales workflow with the power of automation, and visit them at salesbuilder.com. That's BUILDR.com. And vendors, you too can get your name mentioned on the live show. It's a simple monthly subscription. Visit patreon.com/MSP Radio and learn more. And listeners, the number one thing you can do to support the show is like, share, and follow on your favorite platforms. Tell a friend, help us grow the audience, but make sure you have hit that follow or subscribe button on whatever platform you enjoy the content. And you can support directly on Patreon with our Give What You Want model. You set what you think the content is worth. If you've got a question and you're listening to the recording, send it in at question@mspradio.com. I'll be back in 2 weeks with a live show. We are off next week. Appreciate you joining me for the Business of Tech Lounge, and I will see you next time.